Hello, and welcome to another Houdini tutorial. Again, we're working with our brick toy, and this is part 5, creating a Brickify digital asset. So with that in mind, I just want to let you all know that this video, I'm going to be doing my very best to take it a little bit slower. I know that I talk very fast, and this isn't a part where we really want to blow through things. We want to take this kind of slow. At least for me. If you're more advanced at Houdini, this is probably like, second nature to you. But for beginners, especially for myself, I'm going to take it slow so I can see what's going on to understand. So with that in mind, let's move on to step 1. Single brick, that's the one we're working with. We're going to double click to look at the network. And within the network view, we're just going to drag our platonic nodes off to the side to get them out of the way. So we don't want to create a new line. Drag this one out, drag this one out. And now we can just make a square around all that, excluding the platonic nodes, and go to assets, new digital asset. So assets, new digital asset from selection, and now they're all collapsed into a single node. And so now we can set the operator name to Brickify. And we're just going to call this Brickify underscore copy because I already have one Brickify. So this is going to be called Brickify underscore copy. And right over here, we're going to click on this button. And we're going to select the HIP directory. And we're going to click on HDA. And you can see we already have our original Brickify from the one that I made before. So this is just going to be called Brickify copy. And we're going to press accept. And then accept up here in our new dialog. And that's going to open up this new digital asset dialog right here. And so we're going to go over here to parameters, or rather to basic. We're going to do parameters later. So in step 2, with our window open, we're going to set our minimum input to 0. And so that's makes it so our new asset won't require an input for the asset to work. So as you can see, it's its own thing down here, right? In the network view, Brickify copy is its own node. So by setting the minimum inputs to 0, we're saying that this node does not need an input to work. It needs 0 inputs to work. And then maximum inputs, we're going to set that to 1. And we're saying that if it does get an input, it can only take 1. It can't take more than 1 input. Now, with this done, we're just going to press apply, because if we press accept, that'll close the window. So, and if we close the window, you'll have to go back up to assets, yada yada. So let's just apply that for now. Now we're just going to rename this node. We're going to call it Brickify asset. Brickify underscore asset. And we're just going to call this copy. Well, actually, we can just leave it as itself. We don't have to call this one copy, because this is its own tree. So this Brickify asset will be locked to this tree. When we're creating the when we're creating our asset itself, when this project is over and it's an asset that we can enable into other engines such as Unreal, then we need to distinguish between what's an asset and what's an asset copy. But within the asset network itself, we don't need to distinguish any of that. Alright, so with that renamed, we can double click to dive in, and we're going to go up to this switch node, click on it, and now in our type properties over here, we're going to go to parameters, and you can see we have a root. We're just going to drag select input from up here. We're just going to drag it into the root, and so now you can see that it's created another subnetwork. Now we're just going to press apply to save that and move on to step 4. Now, step 4 has us right-clicking here on Brickify asset, and we're going to go to parameters and channels, parameters, click on that, and so we're just going to make that small. It doesn't need to be quite so big. And so now if we change between 1 and 0, you can see that we change which asset we're using. So essentially, what we've done, if we go up a level, what we've done is we've created this Brickify asset, yeah? And what this Brickify asset is that at most it has 1 input. So unfortunately, we won't be able to include this other dodecahedron we made earlier. We'd have to change the inputs to 2 for that. You could do that if you'd like, but I'm just going to keep it simple with one. So we have one input from the platonic, and it's saying, hey, this platonic is in the shape of a teapot, and this node by itself, by default, is in the shape of a toy. And what that switch we have right here, we're basically telling the user when they are using our asset, we're saying, hey, you can switch between our teapot and you can switch between our toy. Easy as that. But a slider isn't the most convenient tool to use, so we're going to make it more convenient. Now, moving on to step 5. In our parameter list, we're going to click on the select input parameter. So right here, and we're going to have some options that we can change up for it. So clicking on our select input parameter, we can refine how people see it up here. And so we can change its name to shape and change its label to shape with capital S. Now we can click on the menu tab, click on use menu, and we're just going to use a normal menu. And so for our tokens, we're going to type 0 and then rubber toy. So this is just creating a menu with labels so that our clients or our users know what each part of the menu does. And then for the second label, we're going to type in custom shape. And then we're just going to click apply. And now you can see this menu over here has changed, and now we can change between a rubber toy and the teapot that we had with much greater ease. Now we can move on to step 6. We can select the second switch node in our tree right down here, and we're going to promote its select input. So by promoting, they mean we're just going to drag select input and bring it to the root again. So this is a different switch, this is a different select input, so essentially we're just going to add it to this menu over here. So now we're going to go over to parameters. We're going to change its name. We're going to change the name to look, and we're going to change the label to look with a capital L. Now in the menu tab, we're going to click on use menu, and now in tokens we're going to have 0 and color. Press enter, and now we can have 1 and texture map. And we'll just apply. And so now, if we play around with this, you can see that we either have it colored as the color node is in this tree, or the texture map that's applied. And we can actually change the default texture map, which is what we're going to do in the next couple of steps. So, in step 7, we're going to select our color node right here, and we're going to promote the color parameter. So drag it right over. We're going to press apply, and you can see that it shows up in our menu over here. There's nothing that we really need to change over there. And so now we can move on to step 8. We're going to select our attributeVOP, which is right over here. We're going to promote the texture map parameter, which is down here. So drag it over, bring it in. And now in the parameter description section, we can click on channels, and we can change this to mandrel. So this is changing the default texture that our object has. So we're just going to change this to mandrel.pic. And now we're just going to press apply for that to happen. And so now you can see that instead of that blue color we had earlier, our toy is now in the mandrel UV shading. Alright, now we're going to move on to step 9. So this is a step where we're just going to make clear which parameters are associated with which shapes. And so we're going to be able to disable and enable them basing on the menu choice. So going back, we'll click on color, we'll go to parameter, and right here in this disable when field, we'll type in look is not equal to 0 within curly brackets. And so that'll tell the color within this menu to disable. If someone says they have a texture map open, they're not going to be able to change the color of that texture map, so that'll be disabled. If they have a color chosen, then color will be open so that they can change the color of whatever shape they're using. Now we're going to go on to texture map over here, and we're going to go to disable when, and we're going to do when look is not equal to 1. And so this is basically the opposite of colors. Basically, If someone's using colors, there's no need for a texture map if they're changing their own colors themselves, so texture maps will be grayed out. And so we'll just press apply, and you can see that since we have a texture map loaded up, our colors are no longer able to change. But if we change the color, now we can change the color around as much as we'd like. We can change it to anything we want. However, we cannot change the texture map. Now, since we're defaulting to mandrel.pic, which is a more versatile default, if we want to change back to our toy.laurus.jpg, we're gonna have to do some work. So in step 10, to go back to the toy map, we're gonna change the texture map, and then we're gonna click on File, and we're gonna go to Hip, and then we have text, and we're just gonna choose on toy Laurus and press Accept. And so now you can see we have the original blue dinosaur. And since that's not the default, because if you remember, if we go to texture and we go to channels, we can see that we changed the default to mandrel. So since it's not the default, this texture map is now bolded, just so we know that it's not the default. Now in step 11, we're going to press accept within this panel to accept all the changes that we've done. And we can close this panel too. And now we're going to go up a level. And now we're going to select our Brickify asset node. Go to Assets, Lock Asset, Brickify Copy. And then we're going to click on Save Changes since we haven't saved any changes yet. And now when we dive down to our Brickify asset node, we can see that everything's grayed out, it's locked, we cannot change anything. So that's just making sure that when we export this asset, people don't play around with the traits and attributes too much. There's only so much that they can do. They can change the color, they can change the texture map, but they couldn't say, you know, remove the amount of bricks or take away our copy to points node or anything like that. They won't have the ability to do that. So going back to the object level for step number 12, we can save our scene by pressing Ctrl S. And now we have the scene itself, and we have an HDA file, which is the asset that we exported. So if we actually go to within our files and look for it and look for HDA, you can see we have a Brickify and Brickify copy, and these are both HDA assets that we can change to export to engines such as Unreal or really anything that you want to work with. So that's going to be the end of this lesson, and I hope you learned something, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching.